I listened to Prince William's Time to Walk podcast and I noticed that he unknowingly revealed hidden clues to his personality. And you're about to see how you can extract those deeper clues from any conversation. Welcome back, my body language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the body language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it. Let's do a very fun exercise with this video. We're going to decipher William's hidden personality traits so you know how to have a great conversation with him. You never know. These are the same techniques I use when I'm listening to someone talking so I can figure out their personality, and that is the key to connecting with literally anyone. Now, without any doubts, the most shocking reveal of this podcast was finding out that William does not know the lyrics to Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. He recalls being on stage with the man, having to sing the song and having no idea about the words. William, if you're watching this, I strongly suggest that you urgently catch up with popular culture. Google Despacito and thank me later. And yes, he was talking about that event at Kensington Palace where he was on a stage with Taylor Swift and Bon Jovi, and he was sporting that very royal body language. Okay, I understand that he can't break body language protocol at absolutely no point during a public engagement. But in the podcast, he mentioned this Tina Turner song, The Best, that Diana played and sang in the car when she was going to drop him and Harry at boarding school. And there is one word he used that is extremely important here. One of the songs I massively remember and has stuck with me all this time, and I still, to this day, still quite enjoy, secretly. That isolated word, secretly, speaks volumes about a very controlled personality. And of course, he's the firstborn, and firstborns are usually controlled and tense. But not only that, he's the heir to the British throne, so the responsibility is not something easy to grasp. Now, that Tina Turner song connects him emotionally to his mother. He actually says, "When I listen to it now, it brings back lots of memories of my mother." The fact that he stated that he enjoyed it secretly is a clue about how much he controls and even hides his emotions, even about something that he has absolutely every right to be open about. What is also interesting about how he talks about Diana is that this memory includes Harry. Diana was going to drop both of them at boarding school, but in the 3 instances of William mentioning Diana directly, he used the words "my mother" and not "our mother." You can see it right at the beginning. When I was younger, Harry and we were at boarding school, and my mother, he has just mentioned Harry but says my mother. That's a clue of how William sees his relationship with Diana. And that makes sense with how he has reacted to The Crown, or the Martin Bashir interview, or the Diana musical. Sometimes you have the benefit of one word that gives a very specific clue, or how the person refers to another person. But sometimes you have to take a step back and see the forest instead of the trees. And one of the recurring motifs in William's podcast was family. In this case, the most relevant mentions were his mother, his father, and his grandfather. And he talked very emotionally about them all, each on their own way. I have strong memories of walking down here, and my grandfather, he used to walk so fast that there'd be huge gaps and spaces between all of us walking down, and there'd be us at the back with little legs trying to keep up. Now you can imagine that of all the times, all the years that William could have referenced on those walks, he recalled when he was really young and he saw Prince Philip as a tall, fast man that took huge strides over the land. He specifically picked a moment of his life of high contrast in abilities, like he still sees himself trying to keep up with the momentum of his grandfather. He could have mentioned any other moment when he was a teen or an adult, but he mentioned this for a reason, most probably subconscious. So he sees his grandfather and what he represents as something bigger than himself. That is important. That is aligned with the responsibility that he has. This is one of the benefits of listening to a freestyle podcast without a question structure, so William could talk in any way he wanted. And speaking of family, he also talks about his children and his cousins. Their mentions are the experiences and anecdotes with each one are evenly sprinkled all along the podcast. So that tells you first and foremost that he is a family man, that he really values spending time with his family. And that's the kind of clues that you can spot to have better conversations with someone. If you meet Prince William someday, now you know that you're not going to ask him about himself, but about his family. Now, the amount of signals that people give away when they are talking about what's really valuable to them can be overwhelming. So despite I'm being the body language guy, my first recommendation is always first, really paying attention to what people actually say. When they raise their voice tone, when they make pauses, when they have a good speech flow, when they stutter, that's really useful. And I noticed that when William was talking about his experience as an ambulance helicopter pilot, he was making longer pauses. In general, topics that affect the person are going to make them speak slower. Topics that stimulate them are going to make them speak faster. There's also the topic of symbols, that in fact are much easier to spot. And one very interesting symbol was an elephant. He recalled vividly being able to touch an elephant and listen to its breathing. And I know that such an experience is not that common for anyone, so one might suppose that he's going to find it relevant enough to mention it. But remember that he had around 30 minutes to talk. So the fact that he took the time to reference that elephant and no other animal is important. And no, Harry doesn't count. Elephants have always been symbols of wisdom and protection, and those are concepts that are closely related to how William talked about his elders in this podcast. That's how you begin to see concepts that are repeated over vastly different topics. It would have been much different if he referenced a fast animal or a night bird, for example. When you give people the chance to talk freely, it's not like they are going to pick the symbols. No, the symbols are going to spark naturally. If you ask them, what is your favorite animal? Well, that is not going to work. They will automatically think, what is the answer that this person is expecting? But when the anecdote just sparks naturally, that's the clue that you're searching for. I also noticed that William was very selfless when talking about his own mental struggles. He did not spend much time on himself, but instead focused on the people he helped, how one boy he rescued reminded him of George. He tried to not leak any of those daily experiences to his family, and also talking about his colleagues. He acknowledging that most of them were really strong both in mind and spirit. Now, how can you apply this? I think most people are not aware that conversation is a skill that can be mastered. For example, once you have all these clues about William's personality, you know that you're going to have a very hard time trying to get something out of him directly. He's not going to talk about himself. What you do is pivot the conversation angle to the things that interest him and involve other persons, especially family. That way, he could open up about himself without talking about himself. You'll begin to spot how he feels about certain topics, how he feels about certain people, and that's how you can get to know someone just reading between the lines. I am sure you'll have a lot of fun discovering those clues of people's personalities. If you want to refine your observation skills, all you have to do is download my 100 body language tips right in the description of this video. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas, and it will always be a pleasure, my body language buddies. Much love and bliss.